Hey everybody, welcome back. You've almost survived Unit 4, but first, let's dive into various ideological perspectives on social policy. Smash that like button, let's get started. Okay, so one last time, we're going to talk about political ideologies. Let's go alphabetically and start with conservatives. We already know that conservatives prefer less economic regulation and lower taxes, and less spending on entitlement programs like Medicaid. But unlike libertarians, there are other areas where conservatives favor more governmental power. For one, they often favor increased defense spending and a larger role for the government in crime and punishment, favoring more police and more punishment of crime. This makes sense if we consider that to conservatives, one of the primary purposes of government is security. Since they favor strong law and order, they may favor policies that some argue infringe on due process and the rights of the accused. Similarly, they are more likely to oppose policies that decriminalize drugs and are supportive of many policies that regulate and restrict personal freedoms. For instance, conservatives are often pro-life and support legislation restricting or eliminating abortion rights. Since they believe that the government should protect traditional values, when that goal comes into conflict with individual personal freedoms, well, protecting traditional values is more important. And that desire for traditional values comes through in conservative support for voucher programs to help students attend private schools, including religious schools. A voucher basically allows a family to use taxpayer funds to help pay some of the cost of private school tuition. One argument for this is that it gives families more choice and control over their child's education and promotes traditional religious values. Ultimately, providing security and protecting traditional values is the key purpose of government. While privacy and due process rights aren't as important, many conservatives view the Second Amendment's right to bear arms for self-defense as a sacred right. And on our big picture concept of liberty and order, conservatives tend to favor order and security on social issues, whereas they tend to favor economic freedom. One last big picture concept is that in policy areas like education and public health, conservatives generally favor less federal governmental involvement and prefer for responsibility for these issues to be left to state governments. Next up, we already know that liberals usually favor more economic regulation, higher taxes, and more spending on entitlement programs. But while they prefer a vigorous government in economic matters, they usually prefer a lot more freedom and less government in social areas. Liberals typically want to reduce defense spending, and when it comes to crime and punishment, they focus more on protecting individual rights, civil rights, and the rights of the accused. This means that they support things like the exclusionary rule to help protect due process rights. The freedom of individuals to live their lives their way, regardless of traditional values, is also important to liberals and helps explain their support for LGBTQ rights and civil rights more broadly for groups who have been historically disadvantaged. They often support decriminalizing or legalizing marijuana and usually identify as pro-choice, advocating for abortion rights. In the area of education and religion, liberals are usually major supporters of public education and therefore often oppose vouchers for two reasons. First, the vouchers reduce funding for public schools, and secondly, these vouchers can be used to attend religious schools, which they feel violates the Establishment Clause. When it comes to liberty and order, liberals favor order and security on economic issues and freedom on social issues. In contrast to conservatives, liberals generally favor more federal government involvement in policy areas like education and public health, preferring nationwide policies to a patchwork of state policies. And last up, libertarians. Unlike the other two, libertarians are super consistent. The answer is always more freedom. Economically, socially, whatever. The less government and the more freedom, the better. Libertarians favor a dramatic reduction in defense spending, and when it comes to crime and punishment, they are obsessed with protecting individual rights and the rights of the accused. They love pretty much the entire Bill of Rights, but they really buy into the idea of due process rights. They are all about letting people do what they want to, live and let live. They favor decriminalizing victimless crimes and therefore often advocate for legalizing drugs, some arguing for legalizing all drugs. When it comes to education, they favor privatizing education, arguing that the main reason why education is failing is because government schools have a monopoly on education. so they favor expanding the choice families have over schooling. And this should come as no surprise, but when we think of liberty and order, libertarians always choose liberty. And lastly, on the state versus federal power debate, libertarians say, no thanks, preferring little governmental power of either kind beyond protecting individual liberty and property rights. And that's it for Unit 4. You made it. Until next time, this has been a LaMoney production. Thanks again for watching. Smash that like button and subscribe if this video helped. As you get ready for the test, make sure to check out the Ultimate Review Packet, and I will see you in Unit 5.